Hi you guys, hello and welcome. I hope you're all doing very well. We're finally getting spring here. I can't believe it. It's like, I feel like this winter was so long and now we finally have things that are blooming. So I'm just gonna show you these really cool plants really quick. Okay, so these over here are Osteospermum. You've probably seen them in garden centers before. Really beautiful, widely hybridized commercial plant. Osteo meaning the Latin root word for bone, spermum being the Latin root word for seed. So technically their name translates to bone seed. I don't know how the hell they got that name. But they're really, really cool. They're in the family Asteraceae. They are in the tribe Calendulaceae, so they're related to ever-bearing marigolds or the calendulas. And they're just a really beautiful member of the Asteraceae family. So personally, I'm not a very big fan of the name African daisy because there's so many other plants that use that name, such as the Transvaal daisy or Gerbera jamesonii, but I'll use that to refer to these guys. So they're a capitulous flower, which basically means that these here are your ray florets, and in the middle here you have your disc florets, very much so like a sunflower. So the flowers in the very, very middle, these disc florets are bisexual. And then right around here, seeing these nectaries, this over here is the female part of the flower. So each and every single one of these flowers is capable of producing pollen and accepting, fertilization for developing of ovaries, ovules, and seeds. So these guys come in a wide variety of different colors. As you can see, they're incredibly easy to hybridize. They're fairly compact. They typically don't extend past approximately 1.5 feet tall. They're born on these terminal stalks, and they tend to kind of branch out in the bottom here. These guys have a very, very long bloom season. They're summer and late spring bloomer. These were forced in a greenhouse, ergo they're blooming a little bit earlier than they would in natural settings. But typically speaking, in the northern hemisphere, these guys will bloom anywhere from May until mid-September. They like good drainage. They tend to be a little bit drought tolerant as they progress through the season. Not incredibly cold hardy. They're cold hardy down to about 40 Fahrenheit, which is approximately 4 degrees Celsius. So this is not a plant that can really do a hard freeze. If you want to overwinter them, you can put them indoors. You can cut them back down to a couple of inches above ground level and keep them in a garage. And they do tend to overwinter nicely for about a season, and then they get kind of exhausted, and then they don't tend to come back. So this is definitely a tender perennial that behaves more like an annual. Especially the more hybrid varieties, they're a lot less hardy. They originate on kind of a single stem here. I don't know if you can see in the middle, there's like a basal stem, and they radiate outwards. If you want to propagate these, you can propagate them by seed. They're notoriously slow to germinate though, and they do require warm soil in order to germinate too. You can grow them from cuttings. If you're going to grow them from a cutting, try to find a side shoot that's not floriferous. So a vegetative side shoot like this one here, for example, or these all have blooms. This one over here, a more vegetative part of the plant. You're going to want to cut it down to where it forks near the base. And then I highly recommend using a rooting hormone, a synthetic rooting hormone, because they do tend to really need that extra push to be able to produce roots. I recommend letting them callus over for about 2 days before you do this. Sorry, 2 hours before you do this. Not 2 days, because then it'll just wither up. But yeah, 2 hours before you do this. These guys attract all sorts of different kinds of pollinators. They're definitely a favorite for bees. As far as like aesthetic damage, these guys are unfortunately quite prone to slugs and snails. If you overwater, like water from overhead, you might get some staining of the actual flowers themselves. This behaves a lot like a gazania or a blanket flower in that it is quite prone to mildew. So once again, if you can bottom water them, that's great. They're suitable for containers. They have a very fibrous root system, no real taproot scenario going on, so they are suitable for relatively shallow containers. Full sun, you're definitely going to get a lot more bloom action if you have them in full sun. They are tolerant of slightly shaded conditions in warmer areas, but definitely a full sun plant. You can deadhead them. If you're going to deadhead them, wait till the blooms are a little bit more spent than this one here, and you're going to want to trace it back to the first leaf junction, which would be right here. I recommend using sterilized tools because diseases are transmitted quite easily between these. They're not by any means heavy feeders. They do well in poor soils as well. Not really much else to say about these, but I think they're really, really beautiful. This over here is Osteospermum. Personally, I think Osteospermum is a really disgusting name for a flower. I don't know who decided that'd be a good name, but that's what they are. They do really, really great in south-facing containers here in the north, north-facing containers, obviously in the southern hemisphere. They make really, really great gifts for friends, really good companion plants to things like alisomes and pansies, violas, that type of thing. And yeah, if you do notice a little bit of yellowing on the leaves on the bottom, typically, more often than not, that's due to waterlogging and root rot and overwatering. On occasion, at this juncture right here, you'll get a little bit of botrytis and a little bit of rot. It doesn't necessarily spell at the end for your plant. You can cut it right at the base, let it callus over for a few hours, and then try to root it from there. Just stick it in the ground. Should come back. Yeah, these guys are really cool. They're not really fragrant either. I have yet to encounter an Osteospermum that is fragrant. But yeah, they're really, really cool. The flowers are open during the day. Some of the varieties will close during the night. Each individual flower blooms for about 3-4 days. So they're pretty long bloomers as far as individual flowers go. But they're a really welcome, beautiful member of any garden, I think. They tend to do very, very well here in British Columbia. You might have some issues with them if you're growing them in the low desert of Arizona, for example, where it does tend to get really quite hot in the day and then cool during the night. If you regularly deadhead these, you can potentially get a second bloom in late September. It's not usually as profuse as the first bloom earlier on in the season. And yeah, if you want to pollinate these, just when the time is right, when the flowers have been open for at least a day, you can just sort of get like a pollinating brush to the middle and then pollinating brush to the outer edge of a different flower and then transfer that to a flower on a different plant. And it's really, really interesting because you never know what colors you're going to get. They're very unpredictable. Another thing I will say is just be careful when propagating these because some varieties I'm sure are patented and we got to respect breeders' rights. So just make sure you know what you're propagating before you do. Just a little legal disclaimer there. But yeah, these are Osteospermums. They're really, really cool. In the wild, you can find these in places like Yemen and Mozambique. White, I think, is the most naturally occurring color. But yeah, kind of a bit of a really wordy video there, but I hope that you learned something. And I'm really excited to make more videos because these guys are beautiful. I have so many other things back here. My peonies are, I don't know if you can see those there, and my hydrangeas and lilacs, and finally got the vegetable garden going, so it's gonna be good this year. Thank you so much, you guys, and stay blessed.